Welcome to First Alert Weather Extra. It is Thursday, May 14th, 2026. I'm Chief Meteorologist Sam Argier. First Alert Weather Extra is a show where we dive into the weather forecast, but also give you something extra. And today that extra is EDC weather. We've got some impacts for the Electric Daisy Carnival out at the Speedway this weekend. We're going to dive into all the details you need to know for that weekend forecast. Plus, we've got an interview with the National Weather Service talking about how they do spot forecasting. Those are specific forecasts geared toward all the events we see here in Las Vegas. So very excited to have you along for the ride today. We've got a very special guest joining me, meteorologist Matt Gontarek. Give Matt a hand, everybody.
Dude, we got the Weather Bros.
Weather Bros are back in action for some First Alert Weather Extra, Matt. Great to have you.
Yeah.
Let's start with just, let's take a little trip around the valley, shall we? It's a Thursday. We got the Strat Cam looking good. Not a whole lot going on.
No, it's been really quiet. I mean, you talk about the heat, though. I mean, that's been the biggest thing, too, right? We're April into May, and you start to think temperatures are starting to slide up, but it's been pretty quiet. I mean, just a few clouds, right? Yeah,
just a few clouds. That's about it. Lots of sunshine as we record this Thursday afternoon. But May, really that month that we typically don't see a lot in the way of rain for us. It's our second driest month all year long, but we definitely get that wind in May, and we're getting a piece of that this weekend. We've got a lot of forecast data to share with our viewers today about that. So let's dive on in here. I'm going to change it over to our weather graphics, and we'll take you to what is going on outside right now, Matt, because as you mentioned, pretty quiet on the satellite.
Yeah, you talk about, I mean, you nailed it with the wind. Usually around April, May, I feel like you get those bigger storms that come in. And we're really seeing that right now. I mean, it's quiet here in Las Vegas. Again, just the exception of a few clouds. But up in the northwest, it's kind of where we're keeping our eyes right now. Rain is mainly focused to the northwest in Portland, Seattle. But here comes that next system. And we're kind of going back and forth with the forecast. But really over the last day, models are turning up with a potent storm that's going to be diving into the Pacific Northwest. Enough to change the pressure gradient to kind of crank some wind here in Las Vegas. I mean, we're used to that.
Yeah, and really the models have really converged on Sunday being the highest impact weather day this weekend. So we do have First Alert weather days out for both Sunday and early Monday morning. So if you're thinking about outdoor plans this weekend, Sunday, it's going to be the windier day. I'm thinking we're likely going to see some wind advisories come down.
I would expect that, yeah.
40 to 50 likely for us. So let's show you the First Alert calendar. You know how we do it here on Fox 5. We always look out the next 2 weeks. And Matt, let's highlight those days we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, look at the breezy days on Friday, Saturday, and we're expecting gusts upwards of 15 to 25, kind of on the higher end 25, but it's really Sunday into Monday. We did change it, focusing for the second half of the weekend. That's important, too. I mean, talk about EDC back in Las Vegas. Huge weekend here in the Valley. You got people traveling from all over the world to come here for this event. And here we go talking about some major winds. So those gusts are probably going to be cranking upwards of 40 to 50 miles per hour.
Yeah, and this is a cold front coming in. So as we see these temperature swings during the spring season, which we've seen a lot of. I mean, this spring's been very interesting. We're coming off all that heat we saw back in March, a historic March heat wave, almost pushing 100 this past March. We made it up to 98. And then April was up and down, and then we're about to go down again. And that's the thing about getting some heat relief this time of year. It comes with that wind. So as Matt stepped you through, Friday, Saturday, breezy at times. By far, really Sunday into Monday morning, the highest weather impacts for us here in Las Vegas. So we'll take the graphics full screen there to give you a little bit better idea. Beyond that, Matt, not seeing a whole lot for next week. Of course, school's wrapping up. We've both got little ones. Mine not so little anymore. I've got some teenagers at home. But last day of school coming up on May 22nd. And for Memorial Day weekend, as we start to look at the weather there, wind is not looking as bad as what we're looking at for Sunday into Monday morning, but a little breezy at times.
Yeah, just a couple of occasional gusts. I mean, how it's been, too, last few days, about 20, 25. So we're expecting Memorial Day weekend. I know it's kind of the unofficial kickoff to summer. So excited about that. But yeah, I mean, it's looking pretty clear, at least for next week for the most part. And then, of course, you get into the 7-day, and we're kind of showing you those days highlighted in a nice little relief on the way.
Yeah, I mean, Friday's going to be a little toasty. We're pushing 100. I mean, considering the average high is around 88 this time of year, definitely on the warm side Friday. That'll be the hottest day, though. So if you want to beat the heat, earlier the better. A bit breezy into the afternoon hours. But we'll see the temperatures getting close to 100 during the afternoon. And then we go into the weekend. There's that temperature drop. 93 degrees on Saturday, 89 on Sunday, 80 on Monday. Now, let's talk setup, because we mentioned that system coming in from the north, Matt, that area of low pressure, all about that change in atmospheric pressure. So there's the low right there moving in from the north. So talk a little bit about not only what these lows do this time of year in terms of the wind, but also it pulls in that cooler air as well.
It does. I mean, that's what brings us the relief. I mean, we don't really talk about 100s right until we get into June, July. That's when it gets pretty oppressive here in the valley. But yeah, I mean, it drives some wind for us, and of course, we're not really loving that here in the summertime, especially the springtime too. It's when the wind really starts to crank. I believe May's our second windiest month on
yeah, it's
record,
up there,
or at least on average. But yeah, I mean, there's that cooler air. You can see that color of green. Everything that's more of those warmer, moderate colors. You think of the orange, reds, yellows. That's the warmer air kind of dropping south. And then as we head into Monday, that's the nice cool air coming in right out of the northwest. And then as we kind of push into the rest of the week, I mean, temperatures gradually going back up to the 90s.
So that's kind of the price we pay to get the temperatures down this time of year. We'll go from
I want to show you that too, though. Look at that.
59. I mean, it's going to be chilly on Monday morning early, and that's really where the first alert is coming in. We're going to dive into that EDC forecast in just a minute in really good detail. But I got to tell you, for a lot of the people that are attending EDC Sunday night into early Monday morning, I really think the weather could catch them by surprise because they got the wind, and with temperatures in the 50s out at the Speedway early morning, it's going to feel chilly.
I know a lot of people kind of, after EDC ends too, they're kind of walking near Las Vegas Motor Speedway too. So it's going to be a whipping wind, but at least we get some cooler air with it.
Got some cooler air. Coolest day will be Monday, then we're rebounding back to 86 Tuesday, mid to low 90s Wednesday, Thursday. Wind not looking too bad into the middle part of next week. Now, Matt, I had the chance to catch up with Chris Outler from the National Weather Service. He's the lead forecaster there, and he gave us some insight on how the National Weather Service works with all these events in the Las Vegas Valley, because we've got so many of them living here in Southern Nevada. He talked to me about how they issue what are called spot forecasts and kind of the biggest things they look at when it comes to weather in Southern Nevada, especially for those outdoor events. The first question I have is for everybody that may not know what it is. What exactly is a spot forecast that the National Weather Service does?
Well, there's a couple different meanings for that. One can be related to fire weather, issuing site-specific fire weather forecasts, and the other can just be for more venue-specific events. You might think like EDC or Las Vegas New Year's Eve Festival, things like that. We're also doing kind of spot point-specific forecasts for those events as well.
Okay, now when you look at all the events we have here in Las Vegas, I mean, there are so many events, and given our weather here, so many of them are outdoors, so the weather does play a big part. Let's talk EDC first, and then I kind of want to dive into some of the other events that you guys do. When it comes to EDC this weekend, it's May, a month where it's fairly quiet, at least in terms of rain usually for us in May. But what are the big things that you look at as a meteorologist when it comes to EDC forecasting?
For EDC, the big news headline is always the heat. Back in, several years ago, it used to be in June and caused a lot of problems because of the heat-related illnesses that we would see. They've since moved it to May, which is a little bit better, but even still, we get those early season heat waves. And even though EDC is at night, there's a lot of events that take place prior to sunset. And people are out, they're out all night long drinking and having fun and doing their thing. So that can also lead to dehydration and other heat-related issues as well. So we're always really focused on heat. And also wind tends to be a big factor this time of year as well. So we've had a tendency to have some pretty big wind events during EDC.
Absolutely. And do you think because it happens overnight, does that kind of give people maybe a little false sense of security when it comes to maybe hydration? Because it is at night, they may not think they need to stay as hydrated or drink as much water or fluids because it's not during the peak of the heat of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is an illusion that people can fall into. One of the other things that gets people is that even though it's warm and actually sometimes rather hot during the afternoons, it's chilly at night. So some people might go dressed, for the warm temperatures in the evening and come by morning, they're not quite dressed well enough. It's pretty chilly out there. So this is the time of year when it's cool in the morning and quite hot in the afternoon. So it's a lot on the body out there.
Absolutely. All about the layers for sure. Now, kind of dive into what the difference is between doing a point-specific forecast, say, for the Las Vegas Motor Speedway where EDC is, or any other event that you forecast for, compared to, say, more of a wider range forecast for the Las Vegas Valley. Can you dive into some of those features you look at?
Yeah, so the big thing with those more site-specific forecasts is that they really need to be specific to that very location. So when we're talking about the weather in Las Vegas, we might be speaking more broadly. Like it's going to be breezy, southwest winds in the afternoon, near 100. We might speak more broadly in those kinds of terms. But for a site-specific event, they might want really specific wind direction. They might have site-specific wind thresholds that they can only do like fireworks or drone operations and things like that in. So we're going to be looking a lot more closely at what the chances of hitting those thresholds are going to be and what impacts that might have to the event itself.
Now, when you start to notice those impacts, take me through what it's like being out there on site, because you do have a meteorologist on site at the venue for these different events, correct?
Yeah, so for some of the bigger events, we are there working with law enforcement, city, county, federal officials, and basically working to encourage, weather safety, weather awareness, and basically highlight any of those big weather headlines that we're expecting. So that's what we're really there on site doing, and usually we're keeping an eye on the hour-by-hour weather data, messaging out the trends in temperatures, wind speeds, and if there is any risk of like lightning or precipitation, we're of course monitoring that as well.
Now, when you notice that, take me through the process of how you alert event organizers. Now, are they the ones that are ultimately making a decision? Because we see EDC or even a lot of the other outdoor events like fireworks. I imagine you're probably not making the call as a meteorologist whether or not they're going to change operations. How does that process look, especially with like a show like EDC? Those stages are so big. You deal with wind gusts, say 40, 50 miles per hour. Are they starting to shut down stages? What kind of decisions are they making?
Yeah, absolutely, and it varies from event to event, but generally speaking, most of these events will have their own emergency action plans, and so different thresholds might mean bringing down certain stages and signage and stuff like that that might be vulnerable to collapse. And then, as we get higher and higher into the wind speeds, that might set off different triggers for different courses of action. Us as meteorologists on site, we're just kind of coordinating with what we're seeing, what we're expecting, and what kind of timelines we have on that. We're not the ones actually making those decisions, but over time we do see the decision makers finally make those calls, whether or not they think the safety is in the best interest of everybody else, and they ultimately make those decisions.
So essentially it comes down to event by event threshold, right? I would imagine. So different events have different thresholds.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
some of the stages might be, more complex and more structurally sound, and others, especially some of the smaller valley events, might be more susceptible to lower wind speeds and weather hazards.
Now, you kind of hit on some of them already, but what would you say are the top 3 things forecasting in Las Vegas when it comes to weather for outdoor events that really are most top of mind?
I would say heat and wind are the big ones right off the bat. One of the 2 of those will get you kind of either way. When we do actually have weather in the valley, like we're expecting the possibility of thunder or lightning, that can be a big deal. It doesn't happen real frequently, and 9 times or more out of 10, we don't have those kinds of impacts for most of our events. But when they do happen, especially with these outdoor events, people are in a very vulnerable situation with regards to like lightning and high winds. So monitoring that as well, but that's kind of more of a less common concern that we have.
No, absolutely. So, Chris, give me a rundown of what are some of the top events you've done as a meteorologist over the years. Give us an idea of some of the different things that you guys forecast for.
Yeah, so one of the more unique ones that we're sometimes involved with is the Rise Festival, the Big Lantern Festival down in Jean. And we usually have a person at the command post working with law enforcement and fire officials out there. And that one is really weather sensitive. It's out in open, dry lake bed. The cell reception is not great. And those lanterns can't fly at really strong speeds. So it's really critical that we have good weather forecast ahead of time, and we're working closely with the event organizers to encourage safety and awareness of the what's going to unfold with the weather during those weeks in October when that usually happens. We've also had big wind impacts with some of the other events here in the valley, like When We Were Young was even canceled a few years ago because we just had such high winds and dust expected all day long. So that's also a big example of some high impact weather that caused an event cancellation. So those are some of the top 2 that really pop out in my mind.
Okay, now, do the event organizers, given that you're a government entity, you're a division of NOAA, do you provide this as a service, or do these different events contract you out for these types of forecasts?
Yeah, so it's just a service for them from the federal standpoint. Some of the larger events will contract out a private weather company, and they'll do their own private weather services and give them weather information as well. And when that happens too, we'll just kind of work as a unit and collaborate our weather messaging that way as well.
Very cool. So last question, when it comes to EDC or really any other big event in Las Vegas, what's the message you want to give for attendees, organizers, when it comes to planning an outdoor event and especially staying safe in the weather we see in Southern Nevada?
I would say the big thing is always keep the forecast in mind, keep the seasonality in mind, especially if you're really talking anytime March through November. Heat and wind are going to be concerns, and the deeper you get into the summer, heat's going to be even more of a concern. So certainly keep an eye on the forecast as the event approaches. And if you're an event party planning to go to an event and have a good time, definitely keep the forecast in mind. Bring water, dress appropriately, and the summer sun is strong. So definitely bring sunblock and all those things that will keep you safe out there in the outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. All great tips. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Problem.
Big thank you to Chris for joining us from the National Weather Service office here in Las Vegas. So two of the big things that Chris mentioned, heat and wind, especially here in Southern Nevada. Now, even though EDC goes all night long, Matt, heat might not be as much of a concern during the festivities, but a lot of people are camping out there all weekend long. So we'll still see some highs in the 90s, especially Friday afternoon and into Saturday as well. But the wind is the big concern Sunday night into Monday morning. So let's dive into the EDC forecast. We got it right behind us.
Yeah, Friday, I mean, looks like the kind of the quietest evening, I guess you could say, for EDC coming up. So the first night, of course, tomorrow evening on Friday, 8 o'clock, 94 degrees. So, I mean, the heat's still around even after the sun goes down. But by 11 o'clock, we'll still have an occasional breeze and gusts between 15 to 25. But look at by 2 a.m., kind of the heart of the overnight hours for the first night, 77 degrees. And then we're ending at least heading into Friday and Saturday morning right into the lower 70s. But check out that wind as we get into Saturday, Sam.
Yeah, the wind about the same as Friday. The wind not too bad. We're talking gusts 15 to 25. Temperatures will be a little bit lower on Saturday just because the afternoon highs aren't looking quite as hot. So that sets us up for 80s and 70s, 60s around daybreak. And of course, if you're not familiar with EDC, the Electric Daisy Carnival out at the Speedway, the party goes all night. It starts at sunset, ends at sunrise. I mean, there's some sets right around sunrise. And I really think those sunrise sets, as the festival wraps up late Sunday night into very early Monday morning, that's where we're going to feel the weather impacts. We're going to be feeling some much cooler air.
Yeah.
This is a cold front coming in as we stepped everybody through, Matt. But look at those temperatures and the wind too, Matt.
Yeah, let's talk briefly. I want to ask you a question too with that cold front, because obviously when you think of a front passing through, you get that real big jump in the wind. But we are seeing at least temperatures cooling down ahead of the wind. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a bit of a gradual process. Kind of as what we call a trough, the cooler pool of air comes in from the north. We kind of get a little piece of the cooler air on Saturday. And generally with cold fronts as they come on in, some of the strongest wind is just ahead of the front. So as the front sweeps through, the coolest of the air, that will bring the gusty conditions on Sunday, those gusts 40 to 50. And the thing too is, in living in Southern Nevada, the topography plays a big part as well. So that wind by Monday morning, as EDC wraps up into early Monday, that wind's coming in from the north, so coming right down the I-15 corridor. And the Speedway, of course, the far northeast part of the Las Vegas Valley, that's where we could see some of those gusts 40 to 50 later Sunday into early Monday morning. So you factor in not only the wind direction more out of the north into early Monday morning, but temperatures that be in the low 60s. It's going to feel like the 50s. And I mean, we've all seen some of those outfits that they wear at EDC.
It's
not often a little more, not as much clothing with some of the outfits.
I mean, hey, you're in the desert. So.
You're in the desert, so we got some wind impacts as well. So all things to be mindful of as you start to plan your weekend. I'll back up the 7-day one more time for everybody so they can get a sense of what we're looking at. Oh, there's the calendar. Let's show you the 7-day. We'll roll it over one more time. Even if you're not going to EDC, that wind on Sunday will have an impact. So again, first alert weather day, Sunday afternoon, it's going to be windy. The wind advisory as we record this has not been issued yet, but it's looking likely. Once we start to see gusts 40 plus, the Weather Service will usually issue a wind advisory. So just some housekeeping things. Blowing dust certainly possible. Especially people now that we're warming up, getting out by the pool.
Yeah.
I know I've done it before. You leave the umbrella open by the pool, the wind picks up the next day.
Gone.
It's gone. I mean, we see trampolines sometimes picked up like that.
That's a big thing.
So I would just say before Sunday afternoon especially, want to make sure the umbrellas are down, any kind of light patio furniture is secure. Because we were talking about some gusty wind on Sunday.
Yeah, even garbage day too on Monday morning. I know some neighborhoods probably have that. Just once they take it, probably just, I know it's hard when you're going into work and stuff like that, but just try to secure those. Blowing dust you mentioned out of the northwest, not as big of a factor, I would say, at least out of a southwest wind. You get all the dry lake bed dust, but again, we are in the desert and there's a lot of dust. So
Yeah, all things we have to be mindful of here in May.
that's it.
Matt,
This is a pleasure, man.
it was fun, man.
Yeah.
We're just kind of kicking off this show, so you can expect more of this. First Alert Weather Extra. We're going to give you the meat and potatoes every day. We're going to give you that forecast, the 7-day, the First Alert calendar, which you come to expect. But we want to dive into a little more detail, give you a little more kind of inside weather knowledge.
Yeah.
And give you all the details. So Matt,
exciting
great
stuff.
time. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Be careful out there in the wind on Sunday. And if you're going out to EDC, it's going to be a windy and chilly Sunday night into Monday morning. We'll see you next time right here on First Alert Weather Extra.